It's been so long since we've been together, I feel like I haven't seen you guys in ages. And, I don't know about you all, but when we don't get together, I just feel like there's a spark that doesn't get fed. And so it's really great to be here today. And today is a special Sunday. It's Alabaster Sunday, and we have lots of special things going on. We do have a special guest, and we will be hearing an Alabaster message from our missionary friend. But first I want to introduce some special guests. We have missionaries Ann and Stephen Sickle from the Greenery Church. And if you want to come forward at this time, I'm going to let you take over from here.
Okay.
All right.
I'll try it. Good morning. Is this one okay? Okay. I'm going to pull my mask off briefly. Well, this morning I get to be here as a representative from Global Missions and from the Global Church. So I want to start by sharing a short video from one of our leaders. His name is Marty Hoskins. He's the Director of Global Missions Personnel, which basically means that he helps mobilize and support all of our missionaries all over the world. So we're going to hear a quick message from Marty this morning.
Hi, I'm Marty Hoskins, Missions Personnel Director for Global Missions in the Church of the Nazarene. Roberta, I wish I could be with you today to greet you and to say again how much we appreciate you. You started out as a volunteer missionary back in 1997, our longest serving volunteer missionary, 23 years. That's amazing. And we're so grateful for your faithfulness and obedience to follow the call of God's upon your life, and we're so grateful for all that you've done, for being willing to serve the people of Romania. I remember getting to visit you back many years ago and seeing you there in action and watching how you loved the Romanian people and how you were called and committed to serve them. You've made an impact on their lives, and I know they'll never forget you. So we honor you today and want to just tell you how much we love you and appreciate you, and we pray God's richest blessings on your life and ministry. I know you'll not sit idle. You'll continue to be involved, and we're excited about that. You've been an example and a model for all of us, and we love you. Thank you. God bless you.
Yay, Marty. We were going to have a chance to meet with Dr. Bustin at the Global Ministry Center that got canceled because of weather this week, like everything else got canceled this week. So we were going to get to have a time with her then, and I got elected to be able to come up here to do it in person because, and I begged for it actually, because I had a short amount of time to spend in Romania. I got to be there in 2006 with Dr. Bustin and with the other missionary who was there and the other people serving, and I got to see firsthand and experience firsthand the way ministry looked there, the way it felt, the way it was to serve inside another culture, and it was really influential in my life. It was a tremendously important part of God sending me and then my husband, I got married after that, to Mesoamerica. We served for 10 years there, and a lot of that can be a direct line back to what I learned in Romania and with you. And so I personally am so grateful for your ministry and so grateful for your sacrifice. Stephen, could you bring that up to me? Thank you. I'm gonna, if you want to come up here for just a second. Okay, one moment. What? Okay. I brought Stephen along as our tech guy, my personal tech guy.
This is all such a surprise to me.
Yeah, we absolutely sprung this on you, but we wanted to do it as a surprise. Hey, thanks.
Fine.
This is a small token of our gratefulness as a global church. of every church and every district and every missionary, I want to say thank you for your faithfulness, for your humility, and for your graciousness, and for your service to the church and the kingdom of God.
Thank you.
It's really heavy.
It is. This is such a surprise, a real blessing, and especially for you to present it to me, and thank you so much. This is very special. Thank you, all of you who had a part in this. I'm very humbled and very, very grateful. Thank you so much. And please tell Marty thank you on my behalf. Good, thank you. Okay, please, yes. Thank you, thank you.
All right, and so Pastor Roberta, we'll let you take the stage. Pastor Roberta was a NASA scientist, and she felt the call of the Lord on her life. And as we learned, she went to Romania and did an awesome work there. I know Pastor Nancy was able to go over and be in Romania for a short time.
That's great.
And there was a church built, and it's a fantastic story about Alabaster. So, Pastor Roberta.
Well, thank you so much. I hardly know what to say after this surprise, but thank you so much. It's certainly been a tremendous blessing to me to get to serve the church in Romania. I would like to say it's great to be with all of you today. It's especially good to be with Pastor Nancy and with Jay and their family. I've known Nancy all of her life, and I'm so glad that she's your pastor. I know that you're glad too, but it's great to be with you, Nancy. I bring you greetings today from Romania. I'm going to particularly talk about one church. We don't have time to talk about all the Nazarene ministry in Romania, but I'm talking about this particular village and this particular church because you have had a part in it, and you may not know that, but you really have, because we received Alabaster funds as we started to build the church in this village of Sigmandru, and then we received some more at the very end when we needed to finish and have our building complete. So you have had a part in all these ministries that I'm going to talk about today. And I want to say thank you on behalf of the Romania district and the Romanian people. So we're going to talk about Sigmandru. It's a village, small village, actually a little smaller, maybe than your city here. A lot of the people are Roma, Gypsy people. It used to be that Germans were the majority of the people in this village, but most of the Germans have left, and now it's mainly Roma. Many of them speak Hungarian as their first language. So it's a very interesting village. Our scripture for this morning is one that is so familiar to all of us, but we're using it because we have seen this scripture is true over and over and over again. And obviously we won't have time to talk about all the miracles that God has done in this village as He started a ministry there. The Lord sent us out to this village, truly. So we really want to talk about this verse. We know that all things work together for good to them that love the Lord, who are called according to His purpose. He knows all about us. He knows what's right for us. And then He transforms lives. And we have seen that over and over and over again. The Sigmandru story begins on Thanksgiving Day of 2001. Now, obviously, Romanians don't celebrate American Thanksgiving, but we had Romanian students there. Anne was not there at that time, but she was in the Romanian Studies program, and we had students in 2001, and we wanted to have a Thanksgiving meal for their host families. Well, in those days, we didn't have any big supermarkets in Sigiswata, and we had no way of buying turkeys that were already, ready to cook. So we had to go turkey hunting in villages, and that year, we knew that there was a lady out in the village of Sigmundru who raised turkeys. She was the mother of one of our church members in Sigiswata, Magda Cheney. And I say that name because we'll be talking about Magda throughout this morning. I asked Magda's son, who is Nelutsu, is on the right up here, if he would take my van and go out to the village and buy 4 turkeys. Now, these were small turkeys that were raised, in the village, so they weren't very big. But anyway, he said yes, of course, he'd love to, and he decided to take along his sister, who is in the middle, and his girlfriend on the left. They did not take the little girl, his youngest sister, and we were very thankful that he didn't. They went out, got the turkeys, and started back, and they had a very serious accident. The van was totaled. And the first vehicle at the site of the accident was an ambulance. So they picked up these 3 young people and took them to Tigramirish, which is the next big city, and they have a teaching hospital, a medical center there. So it's the right place to take them. But of course, when we got the news, we didn't know how serious this accident was. And when we knew they had taken them to this big hospital, we thought, oh no, they're probably injured very, very seriously. Well, someone moved the van from the main highway where the accident had occurred back up into the village of Sigmundru. And when people saw the van, they said, oh, how tragic. These 3 young people were probably killed because the van was totaled and it was in awful shape. It looked like people had been killed. Well, when we finally got to see the young people after waiting all day and praying that the Lord would take care of them, when I went in to where Nelutsu was, I was so relieved. He looked awful. He had a lot of superficial cuts on his face, but he said to me, Roberta, I'm sorry about the van. And I said, oh, Nelutsu, I'm so glad to hear you speak. Don't worry about the van. I'm just so relieved that you're okay. And it turned out all 3 of them were okay. His sister didn't even have to stay in the hospital. He and his girlfriend were released within a week. They were fine. The Lord had performed a miracle. And when Magda would go back out to see her mother, people would meet her on the street and they'd say, Magda, we saw the van and we know about the accident with Nelutsu. How is it possible that these young people were not hurt seriously or killed? And she said, well, we prayed for them and we believe that the Lord took care of them. And the people said, oh, how strange. We'd like to know more about the Lord. And she came to me one day and said, my brother and his wife have invited us to come to their house and pray with them. Well, I couldn't put that off, so we went out and went to their house. It looks better from the outside, actually, than it did inside. It was a very modest house. But they didn't immediately invite us in. Her brother was at the door, and instead of saying, come in, and then we'd start the conversation, he said, when I saw the van after the accident, I knew that there were 3 dead people. But he said, when I realized they were okay, I said, existe Dumnezeu. God exists. And he said right there in their door, we would like our lives to change. So we went in. They took us to their best room, which was a place that was only big enough for 2 beds with a very tiny space in between, and that's where we sat. We sat on the beds and talked about the Lord and explained salvation to them. He had never, ever been in a church service. His wife had been to the Orthodox Church, but didn't understand anything about the Lord. She was not a regular attender. Neither of them knew about salvation, and we explained it and talked to them at great length. And finally I said, well, you said you were ready for your lives to change, or you wanted your lives to change. And I said, are you ready for it tonight? And they said yes. So we prayed, and 2 people accepted the Lord that night. Well, we couldn't just leave those 2 people in the village alone, so we started going out every week. And there wasn't room in their house for us to have a Bible study, so we went to this house that's up in the right-hand corner. It was larger, and we started having a Bible study every night. Now, obviously, we knew that the Lord had taken this, what could have been a very tragic accident, and had made good out of it. 2 people had already accepted the Lord, and indeed this grew into a ministry and a church. Things that looked really bad at the moment, God worked it out for good. So we started meeting here. I remember so well one night, we were in the middle of a Bible study, and a lady just dropped down on her knees and started praying aloud for forgiveness. And she got saved, wonderfully saved. She is still a part of the church today. Her name is Rosie, and she is a lay leader in the church. She attends all the time and helps with everything that she can. We stayed in her house. That house, it was her place where she was living, belonged to somebody else, but she was living there. And we stayed there for about 1.5 years. And then we'd outgrown that place. So we moved to one room in the community center, which is the other building that you see there. The first summer we had a VBS, and lots of children came. We had over 100 the last day of the VBS, and we continued to have lots and lots of children, and we still do. So we knew the Lord sent us out to this village. We hadn't sat down with the church board in Sigishwada and said, hey, let's go out to a village and start a ministry. Not at all. The Lord truly sent us out there because he wanted the people of Sigmundru to hear about him. So it's a wonderful, wonderful time as we started the ministry there. This is inside the room that we had rented this is inside the community center, and we'd rented this room, but we outgrew it very, very quickly. So we looked for a place to rent. We thought that would be the logical thing, but in this small village, there were not any places to rent that were suitable in any way. So then we thought, well, maybe the Lord wants us to buy some property. So we started looking for a house to buy that we could make into a church. And again, we couldn't find anything suitable. So we finally decided, well, maybe the Lord wants us to kind of make a more permanent commitment to being out here, and maybe we should buy some land and build. So that's what we decided to do, and we started looking. We couldn't find any property at first, but finally somebody came to me and said, there's some land available. And we looked at it, and the district advisory board had approved our buying land. And everybody that came to look at it said, this is worth the selling price, which was $3,500. It was not what I really wanted, because it was very narrow, and it went up on a hill, quite steeply, actually. But I thought, well, we can bring in a bulldozer, we can make do. And somebody said, do you want land or not? This is the only land that's available. It's the only thing for sale in the whole village. Well, of course, that just made me want it more. And indeed, I did feel like we needed a place, so I wanted it. But there was one problem. We didn't have any money. And the Cersei, Church of the Nazarene, had given us $2,000 to buy something, go in on something in this village, but they sent it to Kansas City, of course, to the headquarters, which was the right thing. But in those days, it took a long time for us to get any money in Romania from Kansas City. It's not like it is today where it's easy to transfer money. So, I thought, well, they have sent us $2,000. Surely we'll get it soon. And I tried to get some more, and I prayed Lord, please let their money arrive. Please let us get the money. I couldn't get any money. Every place I tried, I wasn't able to get any. And I said to the man, well, we don't have any money right now, but we will have. So he was there just for a month. He was living in Germany. He wanted to sell this property in Romania. And I said, well, why don't you just get you a power of attorney? And when we get the money, we'll do the paperwork, everything will be fine. He said, oh, no, we're not doing it that way. You either pay me before I leave or you don't get the land. So I prayed even more desperately, Lord, please let this money come. We feel like you've sent us out here. We need to have a place. But, of course, I did add, Lord, if it's your will. Well, the day came when he was ready to go back to Germany. I met with him again and asked him if we couldn't work out something. No, you don't have the money, you can't have the land. So I was disappointed, I really was. By then, I wanted us to have a place that we could build. And so indeed, we kept staying here in this community center, doing the best we could, even though truly there were people, outside the door and so on. We had lots of people in those days. But one day somebody came to me and said, well, there's another piece of land for sale in the village. And we went to look at it. You can't really tell from this picture how big it was. It's the part that is mowed there in the middle of this picture. But it was a big piece of land. It was already flat. It was not like the other one where we would have had to, brought in lots of machines and made it level. It was off the main highway. And for us that was significant because we had lots of children coming to the program. And the highway through the village is a European highway, heavily traveled. Well, to let children out of a program and they run home, not very good to let them run across a major highway. So it was off the highway, and we thought, oh my, this is going to be expensive because it was obviously much better than the previous place. So we went to the owner and asked how much it cost, and it was the equivalent of $500, not $3,500. Well, by then we had the money from the Cersei Church. Obviously we could pay for the land and have enough money to start getting some permits and making some plans to actually build a building. So God knew what we needed even before we asked him. And that was just so wonderful to see. I would have made a huge mistake if it had been left up to me. I would have bought that land if I'd had any money. But the Lord kept us from having the money, even though to us that seemed awful. Why couldn't we get the money before the man left? The Lord knew what we needed. He worked things out for our good, even though at first it didn't seem like it. So he gave us this land that was just right, wasn't close to other people's homes, so, the kids could get out and play and holler and scream, and we could sing as loudly as we wanted to and whatever. It obviously was affordable, and we had a clear deed, which later I learned the other place didn't have. We didn't know that either at the time, but the Lord knew. So we were so pleased. We soon had groundbreaking and were just about ready to start with the foundation to get ready for a building. It took a long time to get permits, but we had the money where we could do that at the time. Well, right away, Magda Cheney came to me. Now remember who she is. It's her mother that lived in the village, her son that had the accident. She came and she was a new believer. I mean, truly, she hadn't been saved very long. And she came to the church in Sigiswara because her children had started to our youth program. So anyway, she had accepted the Lord by now, and she's been now a major part of this ministry as we continue on. And she said to me, let's put a greenhouse on this property. And at first I thought, well, that's strange. We're getting ready to build a building. Why is she saying let's put a greenhouse here? She said, it would give some of the people in the village a little bit of work to get it ready and work in it. And then we could grow food to help feed hungry children in the village. Well, I couldn't argue with that, so I said, well, okay, let's do it. So some of the women got together and dug up the soil, and some people brought in flat rocks, and they laid off a place 120 feet long. That's kind of a long place. She sent the men out to the village, out to the forest, to get, saplings, little bitty trees, but that were long but flexible, and that would become the support for heavy plastic that would go over the greenhouse. So she had everything ready except the heavy plastic. And heavy plastic was quite expensive in Romania at that time. And we didn't have money we wanted to put in heavy plastic. Money often is a problem for any of us, I guess. But anyway, we said, well, we can't just go buy plastic. So she said, well, we've got to have some plastic for this greenhouse. There was a Nazarene couple from Northern Ireland, Norman and Linda Patterson. I think you've met the man. They came with big 18-wheelers full of anything that people would give them in Northern Ireland. Used clothes, furniture, dishes, anything. Oh, and sometimes they had the strangest things. But anyway, she said, do you all happen by any chance to have in this shipment a big piece of plastic? And Norman said, well, as a matter of fact, we do. But he said, it's not a very big roll. And he said, I've seen the place you have fixed for the greenhouse. And he said, I don't think it's nearly enough plastic. But he said, we'll come out. So he brought a team, actually from a Church of the Nazarene in Scotland. And they came with this roll of plastic and started unrolling it. And they unrolled and they unrolled. Some of the men would get at the front and pull it along these supports that had been made. They pulled it along and pulled it and pulled it and pulled it and got to the end and fixed it over, where it would be just like it should be at that end. And all they had left was exactly enough for the door. Exactly. I mean, to the inch. They did not cut off anything. It was exactly the right width. You can see it went from one side of where she had marked off. They put it exactly where she had marked off. The width was perfect, and the length was exactly what we needed. Not 1 inch too less, too small, but definitely big enough. You've seen the greenhouse. In fact, it worked out so well that the next year we built 2 more greenhouses. We now have 4. But anyway, we knew after that I didn't doubt that we should have a greenhouse on this property. I could tell the Lord knew exactly the size of plastic that was needed for this greenhouse. So I knew that the Lord was in it. He had sent the plastic. We still have the greenhouses. They're still in use. Different plastic by now. All these years, that plastic is worn out. But anyway, they also put gardens on the outside, used the land very well, but obviously there was still plenty of land, plenty of space for us to build our building. I went out one day when they were getting ready for the garden on the outside, and the men were going along in the front with their big shovels, just shoveling up big clods of dirt, and the women were going along behind with their hoes and rakes and breaking up those big clods and making it into soil that was useful for planting, to have gardens. So that's been an important part of our ministry from the beginning. And Magda still takes vegetables that are grown there, makes them into a wonderful vegetable spread, and makes sandwiches for the children who come to our programs. She also cans, and I mean we're talking about, she cans like 150 jars of zakuska. She cans many, 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 many gallons of tomato juice and makes soup for the children. So we still have our programs. Obviously they were closed for many months during the the lockdown, the first part of the pandemic was we were truly locked down and couldn't have our programs, our in-person church. We were really more restricted than people were here. But anyway, they're still used tremendously. Obviously, we needed water. I said, oh, we'll bring in a well driller, and mechanically drill a well. And the men said, oh, no, you won't. We have dug every well in this village. They've now dug 2 on this property. We're going to go very quickly, but I kind of wanted you to see some of the building as it went up using your Alabaster dollars and some other money. By then, working witness teams started coming. We had lots of teams that came, and they brought money with them to help with materials and then to help with construction as well. So this is then the church that's finished. You can kind of now get a little picture. It's the big building, and we did not plan to make a big building when we started plans, and that's a long story, so I don't have time to tell you, but we knew for sure then the Lord worked it out where we had this big building. And Magda said when it was going up, she said afterwards, she said, when it was going up, I thought that this building is way too big. But then afterwards, when we had ministries going, she said, now I feel like it's way too little. Because it's a ministry center, it's not just a church. The top floor is a pastor's apartment, and we wanted that from the beginning, to have a Romanian pastor and a place for that family to live. Many people in the village cannot read and write even today, and even fewer in this day. We started our ministry, so we started a literacy class. The tall lady in the blue shirt was a retired language teacher from Scotland, Morag, and she came and taught literacy. And in the fall, there were a lot of people that came, I want to learn to read and write. But very quickly, all of them quit that first semester, except the lady in the red t-shirt. Her name was Yolande. She learned to read, and that Christmas, the first Christmas, she read the Christmas story at our Christmas program, and believe me, many, many people in the audience were crying. But they thought, if Yolande can learn, so can I. So in the spring, all of these people came, and there actually were others, but they learned to read and write. And indeed, she was one of our charter members, and there she is signing the membership registry. And that seems so trivial, but for her and for that congregation, it was amazing. So lots and lots of things took place. Our first baptism, Magda is the lady in kind of the middle. I'm holding her hand. So that's Magda Cheney. Magda had only finished the 8th grade, which is, as far as the